Okay, that I got that video out of the way. Hello, everybody, it's me, Flamingo Writer, and today we're looking at another Magical Girl podcast video. Now, so far we've taken a look at a lot of underrated Magical Girl shows, and I'm not just talking about in the summer, I'm talking about all year round. Now, while yes, you could very well argue that I've done this a lot last year as well, because around the time when the year was almost over, I decided to look at other underrated Magical Girl shows from there as well. As you can probably guess, that's kind of what this podcast is there for, to look at something that's underrated and see what people have missed out on. But can we talk about their lengths for just a second? I used to hear a lot of people complain about how Magical Girl shows always have these lengths that are so at times inconsistent with themselves. And personally, this is a bit bullshit for me because, again, why are you accusing this genre of all things that have some of the same tropes that some other genres have? It's not like they're going to have the same thing you're expecting to have. What I'm saying is that sometimes their lengths can vary. On one hand, you can see them have a short length of episodes if it depends on the story, since they think that there's not enough story content to build up an entire show to run last as long as they have. Or sometimes if the story lasts longer, they usually add in a little filler content so they can and really have more of an appeal to audience, so then they can and at least attract somebody, anyone out there, if they want to explore the audience themselves about what's going to happen from the story onward, even if it means padding out. It also doesn't help the fact that whenever you see a Magical Girl show in of themselves talk about how long they will be, sometimes they don't normally last as long, and sometimes they'll last long for OVAs. But let's go back to Shamanic Princess for just another second or two so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. In case you guys don't remember, back in April of 2026 of this year, I've taken a look at a series called Shamanic Princess, which I thought was the shortest Magical Girl show because it only had 6 episodes. But no, you might as well give that a piece of cake and layers to a whole new other series, because today we're not looking at something that's 6 episodes, but rather short. As short as a Magical Girl show can be, if anything. Today we're talking about a series that I wanted to talk about for a while, but I pushed it back for almost a year now. That series being Dream Hunter Rem. Yeah, this is one that's actually lasted shorter than our other series, Shamanic Princess. You might ask yourself, how long did it last? Well, if you want to go in order, it would be around 5 episodes, but I'm talking about the original series, which only lasted for, get this, 3 episodes. That's pretty short. And then there's also the other new series, which is called New Dream Hunter Rem, which has only lasted for 2 episodes. So yeah, 5 episodes in total, but I'm not going to talk about the other one because, well, we'll get to that when we get to that anyways. And honestly, the reason why I put this off for so long is because I was looking at other her shows when I was looking at it. See, in case you guys want a little more detail of what I mean by that, back in October of last year, I wanted to cover this here show in October, but considering I had a very tight schedule and everything, I only watched other shows when I was still doing my podcast, and as well as something from my own channel as well, for my own birthday, and as well as other stuff for October. Yeah, I would have covered it alongside with, say, Vampire Princess Miyu, but I never got the chance to. Yeah, I watched Vampire Princess Miyu as well as Ghost Sweeper Mikami, but I didn't really have the chance to. Plus, I was also doing some other plans for October, if you recall. In fact, I go so far as to say that I didn't want to push it off for quite some time because I really wanted to talk about this in October as well. But considering that I've talked a lot about Dark Magical Girl shows scattered throughout any kind of month I want to, I decided now would be the good chance of anything to talk about Dream Hunter Rem and see what we lie on here. So, without further ado, even though it's not as much as I thought it would be for this podcast, how long it would be, it's finally time for me to talk about Dream Hunter Rem. The series itself focuses around our main character, Rem, who's not all of what she appears to be. Despite looking like she's a little girl and everything, she's actually a grown teenage woman who happens to be like a dream hunter, who happened tends to be more than what it sounds like. See, the Dream Hunter herself is basically where she goes inside people's minds in order to prevent their dreams from having anything bad happen into something called night. With alongside her cat Alpha and dog Beta, they do whatever they can to prevent these nightmares from getting worse, even if it means it'll take them a while to do so. The dreams, while they're illusions and everything, do turn these two who are really into Battle Cat and Hungry Dog into anything, which is always a badass move. And before you ask, no, Alpha and Beta don't talk. They mostly just meow, bark, and growl at times, even when it comes to fighting back. And before you ask, yeah, these nightmares actually are supernatural beings, if anything, but that's really what most of the series does, as well as having to do whatever they can to make sure that these nightmares don't come out as real as they can be, even though some people have a hard time believing that these nightmares will prevent them from falling under. And that's it. Not the video, of course. I meant to say that's really all you need to know about this entire series. Basically, Rem and her friends are doing whatever they can in order to stop these here dreams from doing some damage when they come into full-length nightmares. Now, something like this isn't really anything new, because you've seen this premise before. Characters going inside a dream to make sure that it doesn't prevent itself from becoming a nightmare, and yeah, you can pretty much follow the footsteps as you go along. I'm sorry if it doesn't sound like I have a lot to say on this here video, but as you'll soon see, that's really what this entire series is. But that doesn't mean I find it bad. Unlike the last Magical Girl podcast episode I've talked about, this one is actually pretty good for all it's worth. But let's talk about the character Rem. I will say, for a character like Rem, she does seem pretty interesting as a character. Like, okay, she's not to really say the most interesting when it comes to Magical Girls. For 1985 standards, it's basic as it gets anyway. She's confident, badass, and very noble for helping out, and she's also someone who's very intelligent, but she can be very much of a klutz anyway. But there are times where she does feel like she really does know what she's doing from time to time. And there's another thing I do like about Rem that I don't think I've seen too many Magical Girl shows even cover this right. Like, teach you something about these here monsters and such. Like, for instance, how the dreams. Like, during the middle of the halfway point, she usually tells the audience about how the brain works and what happens when you go to sleep. She'll usually show you a graph of the brain to see how the dreams work and everything by just telling you and showing you about how it works and everything like that. It's a cool concept that it kind of reminds me of those Ghostbusters segments, if anything. Though, admittedly, I'm not a huge Ghostbusters fan, if anything, so I haven't seen enough of it to get an adjustment of it, but I will say it kind of reminds me of that when I see some online. Gotta say, it's actually pretty cool, and I'm surprised that not a lot of shows do this all the time, like teach you something that you probably didn't know about it until. But when I say halfway point, you're gonna see why that is in a minute. But also, there's another thing I do like about. I love how she's also not afraid to help out when it comes to doing whatever she can to prevent these nightmares from happening. Like, say, her battle uniform. I can't show on screen of anything because I can't really show an image, and even if I did, I highly doubt YouTube would get it's really into my skin, if anything like that. But yeah, her battle uniform is pretty badass, especially because she grows a shield and a sword out of it as well. In fact, it kind of reminds me of the Outlanders outfit, if anything to judge by. I haven't seen Outlanders, I've only seen a review of it from the Hero of Tomorrow, so yeah, shoutouts to him for at least getting me into that, even though Outlanders came out a year after Dark Dream Hunter Rem, but what do I know? But that's not all that she can do. She also has a gun that can really shoot more than, say, your average bullets can, and that's actually something that's pretty cool. If anything, I'm actually kind of a sucker for her Magical Girls that have something to do with guns, even though that's not really what the series is like in some cases. Yeah, this may not sound like a Magical Girl at first, but it is when I looked it up anyway, so make of that for what you will. But I also don't mind, if anything, but let's talk about some of the other characters, if anything. We also have the detective in this year's series, which is also something that you don't see often in Magical Girl shows. The detective himself is pretty much what you expect. Always trying to help out Rem and to go from there about what's going to happen and until all the criminals inside the dreams do so already. That is say it's trying to really not like saying he's going to go inside the dream with her, but he kind of does in the third episode, if anything to judge by. But we also have, as I mentioned before, her cat and dog, Alpha and Beta respectively. I gotta say, for pets like these here, although they're not really mascots of anything, but they seem to have transformed into a battle-hungry cat and dog, if anything, and that's pretty cool by all things considered anyways. Plus, they're not afraid to fight back and help out if anything, though apparently the detective and Rem seem to understand what they're saying from time to time. I always like that, where because they're cat and dog, you may not know what they're saying if they don't really talk like us. We still have ways of understanding their language. It's a cute touch, if nothing else. But aside from those four, there aren't that many characters to speak of, unless you want to count the samurai, if anything, who kind of looks like Saitama in some cases here and there. But I don't want to spoil too much of that anyways. But speaking of which, I should probably point out that when you watch the 3 episodes for yourself, the original series anyway, they're really long by all things considered. Yeah, okay, for OVAs, usually I'm more into seeing something that's a half an hour long. Maybe that's just how I view it. But this is not like, say, an episodic series where you're going to say, oh, you can just go through 1 or 3 and 2 or something like that. No, they go in order. Like, say, once you watch the opening credits, they're just going to say Dream Hunter Rem 1, 2, and 3. And speaking of the lengths, I might as well just say that all these here episodes, even though it took me every day to watch it, are nearly an hour long. And I know that may not sound all that intriguing to a lot of people, especially when it comes right down to it. Some people are probably thinking maybe they should have cut it down to something like that. And for 1985 standards, let's talk about the pacing. And I'm not going to say the pacing itself is the worst out there, but it felt like it's not like, say, the last video I've covered from the time, but it does feel like the series could use little adjustments. Like, the whole OVAs themselves really do take way too much more time than they should, but at least things happen in there. Basically, what you need to know is that Rem herself gets notes or something like that. It's like a note from the person that comes to her office to say that this person has some kind of dream. She usually has to go to sleep in order to get into that dream, and Alpha and Beta help her out as they continue to find out what's going on in these here nightmares of themselves. And that's another. The series itself is something that a lot of people claim that it's scary, but I don't know. I wouldn't call it scary or anything. I don't really think it's scary, or maybe I'm just numb to it because I'm really watching a lot of thriller and horror series and shows as of lately, but I'm not so sure you can call it scary. Creepy, definitely, but not scary. But if you want something that's really restrained here, it's kind of strange how they've almost made this into a... I hope YouTube doesn't demonetize me when I say this. It doesn't really feel like this was originally going to be a Magical Girl show. For some reason, they almost made this into, get this, a hentai. I'm not kidding. Apparently, the creators wanted to make this into a hentai, but instead they decided to only put it in the first episode. And the whole thing about this whole tangling thing with all the tentacles and everything like that, they really seem more restrained than I thought they would be. I wouldn't call it the most uncomfortable thing, unlike a certain other Magical Girl show I've covered this year. I wonder what that one is. I really feel like this actually does feel like they were pushing it back. Like, they didn't want to traumatize anyone who went through this essay, like I have. Admittedly, if they ever did do that, I would be really uncomfortable watching it like I did with. Seriously, don't watch that if you don't want to get uncomfortable with it. It's bad enough already. But aside from what I've said so far, it doesn't sound like I'm really having a lot to say on this, hasn't it? And that's not from me being very indulgent in some cases. No, I'm not trying to be lazy or anything like that. It's just, when you have a series that has 3 episodes, it doesn't seem like they have a lot with it. Say what you want about Shamanic Princess. I mean, yeah, the first 4 episodes were a story, while the other 2 were a separate story, while things consider. But at least I had some more to work with than I thought it would have. With this one, however, it just felt like the creators would have had done something with it, but I'm not gonna lie, it kind of does feel like that in some cases here and there. The animation, while it's not anything, say it's bogged down or anything, I can say that it was a product of its time. Some movements can be a bit staggering in some cases here and there, but nothing too horrendous. It's still very decent by all things considered, but that's really what it is. But I might as well talk about New Dream Hunter Rem and tell you that it's not bad, but it felt like something missing. Like, okay, the animation's a lot more polished and cleaner, and what's more, it does look like the creators were trying to make something more to do with the dreams, but I'm not gonna lie, it just felt like there was still something missing. Like, it's still the same synopses you're gonna get from the previous OVA series. Like, you're gonna get just that. A girl who's going far to stop dreams from becoming nightmares, and that's really what it is anyway. I will say for a Dream Hunter, she is a private detective after all, so I guess they had some stories to go with it, but it's just more like, say, it's more of the same, and I feel kind of bad for that, if anything. Not the worst, but you could do far worse than that, if anything. But this is one case where, unlike, say, Fatty Ranmaru, where it felt like I was just rambling on at the end of the video, if anything, I really feel like that's what this entire video felt like. Because I would have at least liked it a little more if I could have, but I'm not going to say I hated it. It felt more decent by all things considered, and sadly that's what I think of Dream Hunter Rem. It's not my favorite, but it's still decent in a good way, something that I can gladly watch if I want to. But it felt like this premise itself, despite being done, I felt like this was something that I kind of wanted to see more of, if anything, to judge. I'll be honest, if anything, it doesn't seem like the series itself really didn't seem like they didn't want to go away, if anything. True, Dream into Hunters and everything like that does seem like a good idea on paper, especially because a Magical Girl going so far as to stop dreams from becoming nightmares sounds like a cool concept to me, even though I've only seen them in episodes, and not just in Magical Girl, but in anything else. Like Lilo and Stitch, the series, did that one, and it was really the anniversary of Lilo's parents' death. Seriously, why did I not put that on my childhood nightmares? That's fuck. I think what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, apparently this is one case where I feel pretty bad. I don't really have that much to say on Dream Hunter Rem. I'm not saying that it's really not that enjoyable unless you want to make your episodes longer than they should. I mean, the first episode was basically like approximately 50 minutes, but the rest of the other two were basically just almost an hour long. So I can't really say they didn't do much of it, but it felt like the creators were hoping for this to be a full-fledged series, but they never took off, if anything, to judge by. It's kind of a shame because, like I said, Dream Hunter Rem seems like something that I would watch, especially for how much they wanted to boost up the series. But since it lasted for 3 episodes, I'm guessing it didn't really do as well as they hoped it would have. God only knows if anyone wants to watch this for themselves. They can if they want to. And I'm being dead serious. The only way you can find this here series, as well as New Dream Hunter Rem, you can find it on YouTube, if anything, where all those episodes are all together, almost nearly 5 hours long. If you want to watch it for nearly 5 hours, I'm not so sure how much people's attention spans last these days, but that's really what it boils down to. I'm sorry if it sounded like I didn't have that much to say on this here in particular, but I feel like that's the same thing about a lot of these Magical Girl shows I've been dealing with for the summer, if anything. I'm not saying it's the worst, but I'm not saying it's the best either. But hey, I enjoyed it better than Trolls from the last Magical Girl show I've talked about, and as well as a Troll in Central Park. Seriously, what the hell, guys? But I don't know which Magical Girl show I'm going to be covering next time, but you're going to have to wait until then anyways. Again, I do apologize if it doesn't sound like I'm doing much of this year podcast episode, but that's really what it boils down to. If it sounds like I'm lazy, maybe it's because I didn't have that much to say, but I'll let you be the judge of that. But until then, I thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay flamingo-tastic. I'll see you all around.